All right.
We'll be live in 3, 2, 1.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to...
Okay.
We good? Yeah. All right, cool. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Today we're talking about Matlab and Python, using them together. I'm Heather, and this is Elsie. And so I'm a data scientist. I do a lot of machine learning, deep learning, signal processing, all kinds of stuff. So I tend to use Matlab and Python pretty frequently. Love both of them. So I'm really excited to show you how to use both together and why you might want to do such a thing.
Hi, I'm Elsie. I'm an intern here at MathWorks. I'm a data science major, and as you can see on my laptop, I love Matlab. I love the Python integration because it makes my life a lot easier. I'm here to moderate the comments and relay your questions to Heather.
Cool. All right, thanks. So we're going to break this up. This is how we're going to approach this. Basically, showing the different mechanisms of calling Matlab from Python, Python from Matlab, vice versa, and then packaging things up. So we're going to use an example throughout. So this is an air quality prediction that we're trying to put into a web interface, right? So we'll show a bunch of little examples probably throughout along the way, but this is sort of the main one that I'll keep referring to. And the thing that's great about this is because I had already had Python code that took data from a weather API that was just a live, temperature, pressure, that kind of thing. And I really wanted to build a front end that you could type in, wherever you want in the world and get back what the air quality is, only from the meteorological information. Also, you can see I'm not a very good front-end developer. So this is not me. We'll leave this blank for somebody that we hire eventually. In this hypothetical story. But so we want to integrate this model that Elsie had built during her summer. And she used Matlab. It was very easy to use some of the apps to pull everything together and very quickly build a machine learning model to do this. But so the next step was, how do we pull all of this together? And that's what we're going to show you. You probably could just rewrite everything. Well, you definitely could, but why would you want to do that? So we'll show how to call the Python code from Matlab. So the Python code does calls the API and does some of the JSON parsing. So we'll make sure that works with Elsie's functionality. And then we're also going to test it in Python. So we're going to test the Elsie's Matlab code with a live running Matlab and a live running Python. And that makes things a little bit easier to debug. And we'll talk more about error handling and whatnot. And then, with something like this website type thing, you're going to have maybe thousands, millions of people using it. So you don't want to have a Matlab, open the whole time. So we'll talk about the deployment options where you can package up your Matlab code, your model, and even the Python code too in a super easy way, and then just integrate that right into the production environment. So that's kind of, just to kind of give you a sense of, I'm going to be talking about these three different mechanisms, but, to give you a sense of why you would want to do this. This is the kind of thing that we see a lot. Again, you want to take advantage of the entire community and the entire world of knowledge out there from, both communities. All right, so let's go ahead and just jump into it. So I have some code. This is talking about the air quality model, just to kind of give you a sense. Elsie had built this from terabytes of data stored on our Hadoop cluster next door. And then she did some signal processing, again, kind of like the things that make it super easy, or that are super easy in Matlab. Use an app, do all kinds of fun FFT kind of stuff, and then build the model, again, like, a day maybe it took. So that's the idea. Now we have this great working model, and we want to start integrating it from not the historical data, but the data that's coming in real time. So first things first, you need to have installation. I'll probably be referring to the doc quite a lot, but there's very rich details on especially the installation requirements. Generally, it's the last couple of releases of Python, last couple of versions, and still continue to support 2.7 for production reasons. So this, again, very, very good wealth of info. But so at least for calling Python from Matlab, you don't really need to do too much. You just want to make sure you have an install and your environment variables are set up appropriately as you would need them to be for MATLAB or Python individually. So it doesn't really require a ton, but it's good to know. One good way to check is to make sure that MATLAB is recognizing the Python install is just PyVersion. So sure enough, it's grabbing my 3.6. And then there's also an option if you say it doesn't find it or you're bouncing back and forth between different versions, you can actually pass in an input. So you can point to where that installation is. All right, so we'll talk. Actually, let me just kind of talk about this briefly here. So just kind of talking about the syntax differences. Oh, geez. Here we go. These are not the right keyboard shortcuts. Why is that doing that? OK. Anyway.
The joys of doing this live.
Yeah, exactly. This is what it's all about, people. OK, so if you're in Python and you might call something like this, I just use square root because I don't have any better ideas right now. So that's how you might do this in Python, right? So in MATLAB, you would basically call py to let it know to load Python, and then the name of the package or module, and then the name of your function. So fairly straightforward. And so this is how you actually don't want to use the import function like this in MATLAB because it just does something else, and you'll run into some issues. There's like a big warning in the documentation at the very top of the page. It's like, don't do that, don't do that. But it is possible, if you wanted to do something clever, like if TensorFlow is a long thing to type, there is sort of an import x.y kind of thing in MATLAB where you can, use it like that. But again, it's probably better. Well, you can check the doc for the warnings, but that is possible. The other thing too, let's actually just run that and see what happens. OK, very good. Square root of the meaning of life, 6.5. So that seems great. So another thing is what I was going to say next. Like this is another syntax difference with between MATLAB and Python. So when you type something like this, when you're passing arguments with Python, MATLAB does not like that equal sign in the APIs. We usually, it's trying to evaluate the equation or expression. So we just pass in MATLAB. It's just comma, comma, comma. So it's just name value, name value. So we have this function called pyargs that will take care of that basically. So it makes it a friendlier MATLAB way to pass it in. All right, so let me run this. Oh no, I got an error. It was a staged error. So I wanted to then talk about, well, for one, we're not going to update my system right now. Very good. OK, so you see this great error. It's very informative. But I just wanted to point out that when you're using the interfaces back and forth, it throws both errors. So you'll be able to see, if you're familiar with your code, you'll be able to see, OK, this is definitely the Python error. And then if it was something, doing something clever in MATLAB, it would throw both. But so it's telling me that I need integers or none or have some kind of other method. And what's happening here is, I staged this for a reason because I wanted to talk about the data types. So that's one of the things I think that people, are confused by or, kind of run into right away. The default in MATLAB is a double or a float, double precision. And then in Python, a lot of times it's an integer. So that's one of the challenges going back and forth. You may get an error, when you're in Python and you're calling MATLAB, you might get an error because you're passing in an integer to a function or a method that's not supported for integers. So it's just something to be careful of, and it's probably one of those errors you'll see a lot and you'll recognize right away. So I just threw an int 8 around it. So pass in as integer, we're all good to go here. OK, let's get rid of that. I don't want that red thing showing up all day. So there we go. Hello world. Voila. All right, so that kind of takes care of some of the basic differences and how you mitigate those. And let's actually look at now, the example I was talking about. So let me open up this weather module here just to see. Oh no, I don't know what it's going to open in. Let's open it as text. Whatever is going to pop up, we'll close it immediately. But again, just to kind of show that there's some code here. It's doing a bunch of stuff. It's calling out to the API. Don't look at my key. Hopefully it's not in there. But it's doing a lot of parsing and whatnot. So we basically call this the same way that you would want to call it in Python, right? You would do import weather, and then you would do weather dot get current weather. So I just stick pi in front of it, and we're good to go. So it's bringing in the current situation here for us in Boston. And you notice it's returning a dictionary. If you take a look in the workspace, I guess that's not telling you too much, but you can call methods on any of these Python objects that are returned and get a sense of what you can do with it. So this, you can actually use all, the appropriate Python methods, but then, some of the ones that you can use from Matlab, like the conversions and, concatenation and whatnot. Okay, so let me run the next code. So we have the weather data, and now we want to just parse it. So again, I'm just using another, function within the same module to make it a little nicer. So, whenever we want to work with it in Matlab, you saw some limited methods that you could use, but you really want to be able to convert it and try to get it in the right data type for what you're trying to do. And this happens a lot. I mean, at least in my life, I don't know about you, but whenever you're doing data science, you're always kind of converting, like when you're bringing in from a file or a database. So it's sort of a common thing that I expect. But I wanted to point out when you're calling the function. So if we go back up to our boring square root example, it actually returned the right data type in Matlab. It returned a double. So it tries to do the right thing. It'll try to represent it the best way that Matlab can think of at the time. It's much more sophisticated than that. Don't listen to me. Matlab just is like, well, I don't know. Let's see. What do you want here? Struct? So for a dictionary, for those kinds of heterogeneous, kind of unstructured-ish types, usually a structure is the way to represent that in Matlab. Or a cell array, just because it can have all kinds of different things inside of it. We're going to eventually change that, but that's kind of the first step. So you can see, again, some of these were actually converted sort of properly, so it was recognized as a float. It's a little trickier when it's inside of the dict or inside of a list or whatever, but no problem because we can just convert the others inside. So you notice that the integers didn't convert. There's still Python integers. So okay, that's no problem. We'll just do that. We'll convert it. So I just have a cute little function, and I have a function like this in like almost all my code that just does some late conversions and make sure these are double precision for Matlab or single int if I want. And so you actually, I guess I should have pointed out, you just call it directly. So you could call string on a string or struct on your dictionary. Nothing too fancy. All right, so I also converted it to a table because this is how, when Elsie was creating the model, she used the classification learner, and she used a table, so now it's expecting a table when I'm doing the prediction. So, and with the right data types, strings and whatnot in Matlab. And so now we'll go ahead and call that. So again, just do a bit of preparation, just some data checking, load in the model that she had trained, and then do our prediction. And it's a good thing we're inside, because apparently it's very unhealthy out there. So we'll just hang out for a minute. Let's stay here. I'm actually excited whenever it's, it's not good that it's unhealthy, but I'm happy because my model, it was very, your model,
Yeah.
but it was very, imbalanced. There are many more happy days than not healthy days. So I get excited when it actually predicts one of the ones that were sort of outliers. Anyway, not that we're excited about bad air quality. Okay, so, just at this point, we're good here with the Matlab code, right? So Elsie had put this in a function for me to call in Python, and it just loads the model. We could have persisted it, but whatever, keep it simple. Do the prediction, and then we want to convert. So in this case, our Matlab code returned a categorical, which isn't converted smoothly in Python. So it's easier. I'll just I told Elsie, give me a char. She gave me a char. We're all good here. And I found that out by immediate errors. So it's not anything magical that you have to anticipate. You'll know right away. Okay, so let's I guess we'll pause here and see what questions are happening before we go to the next part, which is calling this MATLAB code in Python.
All right. So we haven't had so many questions so far. We do have one question that may be a little too specific, so we might not be able to answer it. But someone is saying that they want to do communication between the client and server using JSON over WebSocket communication. Can we please help him?
Sure. So I think, I'm not sure how much we'll get into that. We'll talk a little bit, at least about, it's not very sophisticated server stuff. I will open up a server, baby little server by the end here, and use, I guess it would be the MATLAB client. So that's probably a little bit specific, but if you have other, if you can fill out the question a little bit more or give examples of what you're trying to do. The other thing too, we thought of, if there's a lot of questions that we're not able to answer in the time we have, we'll do a follow-up. So we'll just take the interesting questions and come back and do this again.
Yeah.
So it's the first time we're doing a live stream too. So thanks for hanging in there, everyone, and let us know how that's going as well.
Well, now that we've said that we're taking questions, I've gotten 2 new questions.
Oh, great, perfect.
One user asks, all Python functions are available or just a subset?
Good question. So just at least the official, what's tested is just the base Python version. We don't test each, there's bazillions of packages and things like that. But there's no real restrictions on libraries or packages. In the documentation, there is a nice, let's see. Yeah, there's a couple of things that are talking about limitations. There's just a few things that you can't do, but they tend to be sort of, that's different. They tend to be sort of what I think of as low-level kind of things that you may not want to integrate anyway. You would probably want to do those individually. But generally, there's really no restrictions. Have at it. And please, one of the most important things is because we don't officially qualify all of this in our test frameworks, it's important to give feedback. So it's really great if you're trying something and you're actually having problems, please let us know because that's something we can work on for sure. So great question.
So I have both gotten another question about client-server models and a message from the supervisor saying, are you familiar with the Matlab Compiler Sdk or Matlab Production Server? They can handle REST requests by JSON. But a user asks, can I use the client-server model in Python from Python in Matlab to Python in Raspberry Pi? Because data collection is not that easy in this case. Also, how can we use data coming up from a UDP packet into plots in Matlab? Okay,
good. All good. All really good questions. I was okay, what was the first one again? So I did find the code that I was talking about where, we will show, she mentioned Matlab Compiler Sdk and Production Server is a good way to package all of that up and, this has the REST API.
Yeah.
So we actually will show that and we'll leave some time for questions there if you see something that is more specific. The other one with the other one was the data, the UDP.
Yeah, UDP packets.
Yeah, I'm not sure that if you. Yeah, I might have to think about that one for a second. So it shouldn't really be too different. If you are if you have the code for working with it written in Python, you would just bring it back. You might have to do some data conversion, but otherwise it should be similar to what I showed. That is one question is people do ask about plotting. Sometimes oh, could I use some weird crazy plot that someone added to Matlab or something. Generally, it's a similar. I usually try to keep that separate. I've seen some pretty weird hacks of showing plots from within. It's just to me that's just ripe for Java and JavaScript problems and headaches. But at least for me, again, I tend to just like, if I want to use Python plots, then I'll just bring my data over and use that, you know, kind of independently. And same with MATLAB, just bring the data in from Python or call the Python code and, you know, do your visualization. I guess, I don't know if MATLAB's over here and Python's over here. I guess it should be switched because you wrote the MATLAB model, but it's okay. Like, keep it interesting. All right, good. What else?
Oh, one second. What about, I have a basic image segmentation script on MATLAB. Can I run that in a Python environment?
Yes, yes. So again, like it probably, I'll show that now, how to, this is a good segue.
Good segue.
Yeah, exactly. It was like I staged that question.
We did not stage that question.
No, I swear, no. Trust me, we don't know what's going to happen. So yeah, we'll show that now, how to call your, you know, MATLAB code from Python and some of the, you know, tips along those lines. And then since we were talking about data, one of the things, you know, when you're converting back and forth, people do often ask about, you know, data conversions. Does it make copies? You know, how does this all work? Generally, there is also information in the doc about that. We are also, there's Apache Arrow and Feather are ways to get at the memory view in both languages. So that's something also to check into if you're, you know, running into that kind of thing where you're transferring data back and forth and you want to try to, you know, minimize that or avoid it altogether. All right, good. So let's, excellent. So let's, move on. So now that this is Elsie's, let's just take a look at that real quick again. So this was Elsie's function, does the data preparation code, loads the model, does the prediction, converts. So we're gonna just see what we can do here, call it in Python. All right, so let's just have at it. Just importing, getting my API key so you guys don't hack my world. And this is the weather module that I was just talking about. Why doesn't this go into the thing? I always forget my keyboard shortcuts. All right, so that was the weather information that we just got. Doesn't seem to have changed much in the last like 5 minutes. And this is me now importing the MATLAB engine. So this is what we were talking about earlier. You know, you're basically starting up a MATLAB. I already have a MATLAB started, so there's also ways to take advantage of that. Again, more information in the doc. But it starts up a MATLAB process behind the scenes, and then you just call your MATLAB functions from this, so like ENG or whatever. And again, this is where you want to keep in mind that you know, you want to switch. So had I not done that, some people don't like to show errors live. I don't know. I love it. I think it's awesome because it's very life. Helpful. It's just life. Like if you don't get 100 errors a day, you're not doing it right. Thousands in my case. So if you look at all this spew, a lot of it, you know, again, it throws both. It tends to catch and throw both the Python and MATLAB error. And then at the bottom, you can see it by just MATLAB execution error. And then, you know, that's your familiar MATLAB error. So we're good. Another thing, you know, we were talking about the syntax differences before, you know, how do you work with that? One of the things too, it's like some MATLAB functions can have, you know, one output or multiple. So in this case, it just had one. There's not, well, at least a super slick way in Python to have, it's not like MATLAB syntax where you have the outputs on the one side, but you can tell MATLAB to do that by this narg out. So number of arguments out. So I'm using, well, this is just from the documentation, just to show, but using the GCD function and telling it, just give me 3 outputs. So had I not, it would just give me the first output. And so that's, again, like one of those MATLAB things where, you know, if you just call the default, it gives you 1 output, but you can, you know, get more. So that's how you manage that. And now if we want to call Elsie's function, done. It's still very unhealthy out there. Stay where you are. So that's pretty much it. I mean, the, you know, again, this is where it's sort of your choice or wherever it makes sense in your application of like where you're going to do the, you know, data importing or management back and forth. But for the image application, for example, this could very well represent your segmentation code, and you're just passing in the image that you got from, Raspberry Pi, or I think I'm confusing multiple questions. But right, so that's basically the same idea. So I'll pause again to see what questions we have.
Yeah, the questions are really coming in.
Excellent.
So there's one that I'm very sorry that I missed with the previous section. I thought we should not completely consume this with Q&A. So a user asks, can we apply the deep learning library TensorFlow for physical layer communication model using deep learning in Matlab?
Good question. So actually, that's a perfect question. There's actually a couple of different ways to do that. We have, there's a TensorFlow model importer capabilities within Matlab. So, basically it's just like, I can't remember the syntax on the top of my head, but it's like load TensorFlow model. So you can just bring it right in. And we also support Onyx. So if you have, other like models like that kind of out in the community, so that's no problem. You can just bring in the model and it would represent the layers appropriately in Matlab. But then also, just like we showed here, you basically could just call pi.tensorflow.lstm without any problem. I'll say for me, whenever I'm doing it, calling TensorFlow models that way, I'll tend to package up all of my TensorFlow, or as much TensorFlow code as I can into one kind of module, or like a sort of slicker interface, so that I'm not going back and forth too many times. So basically, yeah, put all of my, the training and things like that in one function or module, and then it makes life a little bit easier for me. But again, it sort of depends on what, if you kind of want to get it in and kind of tweak it a little bit and like work with it a little bit more, then you might want to try, using the path that we just showed, the, pi.tensorflow. Blah, blah, blah. But then again, if you have a model that somebody already wrote that you love, you just, use the importer. And there's also for Keras and a couple others too. So that's also the deep learning stuff is available on the MathWorks GitHub because it's such an active community with tons of developments like every second. We have a lot of that on GitHub, so you can check that out. And again, if you see any models that you care about, feel free to give us some feedback. That's definitely something that we do hear a lot. Because somebody also earlier was like, why do you want to do this? We do hear tons about TensorFlow is, obviously great deep learning stuff. And a lot of people trying to do, signal processing or, simulations and combining all of these things. So that's a great example that we hear all the time, of using MATLAB and Python together.
A user asks, is it possible to use code generation MATLAB coder to convert the script to C code?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I have to check on some of the, usually with the C code, there are different data type conversions, different things that you might need to do. We will show packaging up. I'll actually maybe see if Dave has any ideas about the coder, because I know that there are limitations, so I don't want to speak too much to it and live. But certainly the part that I do know a lot about, and I'll show, is the compiler part. So you're instead of generating C code, you want to generate the Python code, or you want to call the REST API for your client server stuff, and you can absolutely package up all of that, pi dot blah 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 that we just called, pi dot weather dot all that, and it definitely packages everything up. So I'm not sure with the coder stuff with the conversions.
Yeah, Dave says MATLAB can't generate C code from Python.
Okay, there we go. But so a good way to do that would be to keep those things separate for now. So yeah, good questions.
Someone asks, Python functionality, what version of MATLAB do we need?
Oh, good question. Dave can probably clarify a bit, but I believe this was released in 2014 or 15A, I believe. So I I'd say that I would always go with the best and the latest and greatest. Just again, because we tend to, as things evolve, obviously in Python world, it's wild. So, things, we try to keep up best we can on testing and, making sure everything is going to work properly. So it was released earlier, but definitely the later versions will be more stable. You'll see some better functionality. Like the memory view stuff is, pretty recent, the last couple of releases. That's pretty slick. Yeah.
Yeah, Dave says 14B.
Okay,
so
perfect. 14B.
You know what
It's
you're
close.
talking about.
It's close.
And so the last question for this section, using Python for deep learning models for physical layer communication and importing the same in MATLAB, is it possible?
Yeah, so that was, I think, I had talked a little bit about the Tensorflow stuff before, so like same kind of thing there. I'm not sure about some of the specifics. We do have, well, I think Joanna's somewhere in the chat, so she's anxiously taking notes and waiting to probably put it in her blog, hopefully, some of these things. So yeah, great questions.
All right. Let's move on.
Good. Yeah. So let's sort of finalize. We'll leave some time here at the end to do more Q&A. But I wanted to now show packaging all of this up so you're calling it from outside of a MATLAB process. And that is right here. So we have these apps. So this is one of the things that, again, somebody earlier asked about, hey, why would you want to do this if you're using Python and you're, why would I want to, use MATLAB? That's crazy. Well, why are you, don't listen to the video then, I guess, because it's not helpful. But it's actually nice because, some of these things, like we're talking about, of course you could have done all of this modeling in Python, but, Elsie was able to get a model with this app by the end of the day, and you have all these signal apps. But for me, at least, I do actually do a bit of, server work, and I probably shouldn't be because I barely know what I'm doing. So these things are super helpful for me. Because you have apps that will help you walk you through the process and package everything up, all of the dependencies and things like that, and then it's super easy to integrate on the other side. So, I'm not super IT savvy, but I was able to get this thing, I am able to get these things working. Okay, click on the right thing. All right, so this is using Matlab Compiler Sdk to, put the model and the code that Elsie had wrote and use it outside of MATLAB altogether. So you just add the function, and if you have cool information and pictures that you want to put in there, just use the defaults. This will automatically find dependencies. So if you need, some of these map files and whatever code you need, and then it also comes with setup.py. So I didn't talk too much about the install steps in the last part either. But so there's one liner that it's just, setup.py basically, and you run it in the right directory where your MATLAB install is. So that's all in the doc. It's very straightforward. Again, depending on however your Python world is set up, Anaconda, blah, blah, blah. You may need to adjust your environment variables and pointing to paths and whatnot. But again, this comes with it. So if you're just handing this over, if Elsie and I didn't actually work together and sit extremely closely at this table, it might be more of a handoff. Hey, this is my code. Go ahead. So this is really helpful for myself because then I can just run that and go to town. So let's see what this looks like. Okay, here we go. So same code, I'll just run through this again, oops. All right, same story, things probably haven't changed much. It went up by a couple of points. So now whenever you are using this deployment path, you just call, instead of import matlab.engine like we were doing before and starting at MATLAB, you just import the function or the name of your package that you gave it here. So I called it airqual, so that's what we'll import. So pretty straightforward. Then you want to just initialize it, and this calls the MATLAB runtime. So again, Elsie could create this, give it to me. I don't have MATLAB installed. Of course I do. I have like 5 different versions because that's my life. But I don't need it. All I need is this lighter weight runtime environment. You notice the first time it takes a sec, and then after that it'll be okay. But it's basically using the runtime instead of opening up a whole MATLAB in the background. And so now that I've initialized it, I can just go ahead and call the function from within the package. And again, it's still very unhealthy. We'll stay where we are. So what I did is, again, this is the name of the package. There we go. So this is what we said, import airqual. That was the name of the library or the package. And then this was the function or module. My terminology is very off on all of this, and I use like JavaScript and C and everything else. So I'm like, well, whatever you call it. Anyway, so that's that. So easy enough.
Yeah.
Let's try another city. I guess I already had Austin here. Maybe something else. We had some shout outs. I don't know how worldwide this is because of the permissions. So let's try Seattle. All right, very good. It's good. Okay,
Yeah.
It's not always unhealthy everywhere. We'll go there. So I think at least Michael Quinn is from around there. Okay, so that is, again, using Matlab Compiler Sdk. And then while we're on the subject of deployment, before we pause for more questions, we talked about the runtime, right? So, but in our web application, even having the runtime called might be a lot, or it might have a little bit of lag if we're trying to like share this with 1 billion people. So I can use Matlab production server to actually serve it up, like we were talking about before. So hopefully this starts to hit out some of the other questions that we have coming in before. But similarly, we have an app. You add your function. Oh wait, I think I actually have one. Oh, different one. Here it is. All right, super fun watching me click on things live. Where is that code? What did I call it? So this is where, okay, my report. So this is where I actually wanted to see, well, it's my job to test things like this, but I wanted to see if you could package up the Python code that I just called in a MATLAB function, basically. So that way, if you have a bunch of people writing all sorts of different stuff, you can just bring everything in one place whenever you want it to be, served up with a REST API. So this is the same thing that I called earlier, just, again, same story as before. So let's start up. This is it. Yeah. So again, all the dependencies I needed. And the handy thing for all of this is that this for production server, it comes with a little baby test server. So it just opens up like a 1-node server, so we can test like actually proper testing in the in the production environment. So I would die without this pretty much, or like, well, maybe not die, but I would not attempt to do such things. It would take me a really long time. So we started the server. So let's pop over to our code. And this is not that pretty because I just did it real quick. But this is the same address that I just saw in my app. So this was up at the top. It gives me, this is my local host. Again, it's like cute test server, makes my life really easy. And then that's the function that I call. So this is definitely the recommended way for me, at least. There is a way to use, you can export everything with production server, but the RESTful API is much, much more popular. So I'm gonna just go ahead and run this. And, oh, okay, it worked. It's one of those things where there's like, I don't know. But had it not worked, I would have been okay with that too. It wouldn't have been staged. But another handy thing, again, since there have been some questions, I'm going into a little bit more of this stuff just for some tips. But you can do breakpoints, and again, super, super, super helpful. I would not be able to deploy things. But if you want to add it in, now I can, I think this is the same yeah, so it broke on function entry, and now I can actually see what this data looks like in Matlab. So again, very, very handy for going back and forth. Also, even in the deployed environment, you can catch exceptions. So if you really wanted to do a lot more sophisticated error handling, kind of on your own, if you're building the application, go ahead. So from the output, whenever you're calling it from the REST API, again, that's just sort of a simple, well, as simple as requests get, I guess. So it comes back as just a JSON where you have LHS is like left-hand side. Get it? So RHS, LHS, because we're mathematicians. A lot of us are mathematicians here. And this is how you would access it. So basic indexing. All right, so we'll pause again and wrap it up with some Q&A.
All right. So the first question we got, which I'm actually very interested in the answer for, what's the best book to learn about MATLAB and algorithms?
Ooh, depends on the kind of algorithm. There's so general MATLAB. It's called the Matlab. Crap, what is it called? It's by Dr. Hayam, Nick Hayam. It's called the Matlab. I'm in it. He thanked me. I'm acknowledged in it, and it's on my desk. I think I forget. But I will, we can, I'll think about it in a second.
Okay.
But there are some, if you go, actually the MathWorks website has a good list of the ones that have been, reviewed and whatnot internally. And depending on what kind of algorithms you're looking for, there are books on machine learning, stats, deep learning, signal processing, a lot of stuff. And so the ones that we've sort of vetted out and really recommend are on the book page on the MathWorks website.
All right. And when do you prefer Python over MATLAB and MATLAB over Python?
Good question. So I tend to like the IDE. So for me, MATLAB, I tend to use whenever I want to just mess around and click on stuff. Right, so it's more like these apps that I'm showing where I'm just like, okay, I got data. Let me look at it. Let me try stuff. Let me plot something. This is like the worst plot ever because it's one data point. But so that just makes my life easy and fast. Also, well, I work for MathWorks, so I do all sorts of different kinds of applications. And some of them, if it's like taxi examples or whatever examples that you see out there in the world, there's not maybe a lot of value to use MATLAB if you don't care about IDEs and the apps and things like that. But it really starts to get valuable when you're looking at the signal processing, the more if you think about the over the last 20 years for both languages, there's been so much investment from MATLAB and that kind of area, and then recently with Python, a lot of investment in data science and deep learning. So that's kind of where I kind of go with that. And then I just like to see what's going on in the community. So I'll just look at people's examples and then use whatever they're using for the example. So good question. And web development kind of stuff, like the server front end kind of stuff, I tend to do in Python. Flask is very nice if you can understand server stuff. But then, again, whenever it's time to wrap everything up, I'll tend to use MATLAB so I don't have to worry about kind of stitching together all that glue. Good question.
So we've gotten the title of the book. It's MATLAB Guide.
MATLAB Guide. Okay, very good. Definitely. So that's a great one for general kind of how to work with data types, how to matrix math kind of stuff. And it was written by a mathematician. So yeah, it's a good one.
All right. User asks, I use Jupyter Notebooks to run quick Python scripts from my browser. Can I do the same for MATLAB?
Yes. So there's a MATLAB online where you can just go, let me see if I can pull it up here. Voila. So this is basically the same thing as you would see in the desktop. I might be on a test version. No, that looks normal. So that's basically the version. And then as you can see, the live scripts are sort of notebooky. You have a lot. That's also another nice thing. I'm fairly savvy nowadays with the Markdown and stuff, but this is pretty nice if you're really, creating documentation. Again, more click button word-like kind of functionality. Did that ever come up? Yeah. So there you go. So again, it's kind of pretty similar web kind of functionality. Cool. Anything else?
No, I don't see any other questions. So I think we should probably give them a couple minutes to see if someone thinks of a question as we're wrapping up the stream. But
sure.
Yeah.
Great. Well, let's go back to that title slide because I like that heart.
I like that heart too.
Together. But yeah, thank you so much. And if you have questions, keep it coming. This is really exciting. And for me, I love this topic. It's really fun to talk about integrating all of this stuff together. So I'm very happy and hope we can do this again.
Right. We've gotten 2 more questions.
Yes.
My idea was right. Okay. Do you have any tips for debugging deployed MATLAB functions called from a Python application?
Good question. I would say I could get to the doc page. I'll hold off. But there's a doc page on exception handling. So if you kind of do your own try catching in MATLAB, you can even do some of that management in Python. So that's one thing to take a look at. And also, well, I guess I'm not sure if you're using the production version. At least the test environment is really, really helpful, and having using breakpoints and things like that. Yeah, that's probably the best I can think of. There's also one of the big questions is always the data types. So I think that's probably one of the things that happens a lot. And also one piece of advice too, before deploying, use the engine API. So kind of like we did, we had the interactive one open because you can get at the MATLAB workspace. You can, the communications is a little easier. So you might be able to get at the errors a little bit easier. And then I just kind of put this up. This is also in the doc, but just to kind of give you an idea of what, these probably cause the most errors going back and forth, like how these things are represented in each language.
Someone asks, is your link to the demo public?
Good question. Not yet. I meant to do that this morning. So I'll put it on my GitHub just shortly, and we'll put the link in the description. I think this link will live on for this recording, so we'll put the link to the GitHub repo in the description. Thanks.
All right. And that covers all the questions. I guess we're wrapping up.
All right. Great. So thanks again. This was really awesome. Let me get back to the heart.
One thing. If there are topics you want streams about, please comment them so that we can know. Like this is our first time doing this.
Right.
We want your input.
Yeah. So we'd like to do this more. And it wasn't that bad. I didn't, crash and burn.
And you're probably not going to get fired.
Too many terrible errors. Probably not going to get fired. Hopefully the day's young. No, but this has been great. They're excellent questions. Really happy to engage. So keep it coming, and we'll try to follow up with the link, and hopefully we can do this again.
Yeah. Thanks for watching.
And these are our Insta and Twitter and Insta.
And Insta.
In case you care to keep in touch. Thanks.
All right. Bye.